Hello and welcome to the Niche Gamer podcast. Today we have four very, very special guests with us. Today we have Fingal.
Hey.
We have Alan.
Hello.
And we have, actually one of our newer writers today, Brandon Little.
Hey, how y'all doing?
And you all have me. So, first on the agenda, welcome to our new guest, Brandon. What have you been up to this week, man?
Just been playing a lot of games. I've got like 1,300 Steam games.
I think everyone's sort of going through their much neglected backlogs at times like this. So what have you been playing?
Mostly Dead by Daylight and some Japanese game, Valhalla arc, where you like manage a hero school.
Oh, sounds right. I think I've heard of that. What was it like? What? How you been enjoying it?
I only just started it last night. I'm only a couple missions in, but it's kind of fun. Good time waster.
I've actually sort of picked up a new game myself recently, Wizardry 8. Thanks to a certain YouTuber. I've reviewed it recently and gave sort of like a review code that sort of, not a review code, a promotional code to get like 90% off. Which resulted, I got like UK money, it was like 79 pence. So I mean, it's
like $3?
Yeah, like crazy stuff. Like I only played for like a couple of hours last night, but incredibly moreish. Incredibly moreish. Like you sort of, it's like one of those fantasy sci-fi things mixed together, where you sort of, your big spaceship crashes down. You got to find the three. They're not Dragon Balls, but they're basically magical balls anyway, that sort of save the day and all that sort of crap. But the interesting thing in it is apart from the combat and how you move around, is the conversation system. When you talk to an NPC, you get keywords. Using those keywords, the NPC will then respond to whatever the topic is, and it's got loads of sort of responses programmed in, and every NPC is voiced. So it's really, so considering and like it's an old game. I think it's from like the early 2000s, and like they've got full voice acting for your party, which can have like 2 voices for 12 personalities, like 24 different voices, which then have all voice
audio to record.
Yeah, you've got the voices that lines they have in combat, the things they say during the story, and then every NPC talking about nearly every subject within the game world. It's crazy. It looks really, really good. But so in the news this week, and a subject that we can't talk too much about, The Last of Us Part 2 has officially leaked, and everyone knows everything about it.
And it's hilarious.
Yes. Obviously, we can't too much in detail about this because
everybody pretty much knows at this point. We don't really need to talk much about it.
Yeah. I mean, there have been rumours going around that sort of Naughty Dog and Sony have been sort of bringing DMCA claims down on anybody who's sort of discussing the ending, which fair enough, we won't talk about it. We'll sort of, but I mean, guys, what were your sort of reaction to, well, not just the ending that we all now know, but the game in general?
Who should go first?
You can go first.
All right, so my feeling on the whole leak of Last of Us 2 is that now that so much of it has been leaked, and like a big aspect of like why anybody plays these kinds of games is usually for the story, right? All right, so when you know everything about this, and you know like what happens, it kind of like deflates a lot of the like the excitement and the will to play it. I know, like I've played the first Last of Us. I mean, I have my issues with it, but even like if a lot of games I don't really care too much for the story, if like the core game is like enjoyable, I'll come back to it. But that's not the reason why anyone would ever replay Last of Us. Is not for the gameplay, right? It's you play it for the story, and because replaying it is a bit of a slog, because you got to do lots of forced walking sequences you can't skip. And it's not exactly a rip-roaring good time either. It's a very slow burn kind of game. And I'm only guessing a lot of this will apply to the sequel as well.
From what we've been able to glean of gameplay, both from trailers and from the leak, that certainly seems to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even like a Telltale game where you have like these options and different routes, and you can craft the story in different directions. It's not gonna. I mean, at least to my knowledge, it isn't like that. But I can't imagine that they would attempt something like that on the kind of scale and budget that Naughty Dog is going with.
It's crazy. I mean, another good point about like the story sort of thing. If you know a plot twist in advance, if it's a good plot twist, you sort of get excited for the anticipation of it.
Yeah, true. I mean, I had a lot of what's it called? Final Fantasy VII was spoiled for me ahead of time.
Oh, damn!
I mean, I didn't care. I mean, I've played the original game. I know where it goes. Obviously.
Oh, right. Sorry, I thought a bit like the original Final Fantasy VII. Sorry, I got my wires crossed.
I mean, it didn't really hamper my enjoyment. I mean, I even already anticipated, like, I was exposed to some of the other new story elements. I was exposed to that, and it didn't really hamper my enjoyment. I had a greater understanding of what the developer was trying to do. And I'd say if I went in totally blind, I probably would have been more pissed off. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. I suppose, like, if you had high expectations for Last of Us 2, I can imagine being really pissed off now. So if you go into it now, it could help curb your expectations.
Yeah.
I see this as a blessing in disguise for like the people who were really excited for it.
Really?
I think so. I think it's always better to be disappointed first, because then, you know, your expectations are curbed.
Oh, God. It's like that meme with zero punctuation, where it's like the grid diagram of being excited for a game or assuming the game's going to be crap, and it's like every possible combination of whether the game's crap or good. The only time it's bad is if you're excited for the game and it turns out it was crap in the end.
Yeah, that's cute that you mentioned that. I mean, my version of it is that hype kills. Hype is never done anything good for a game.
Not at all.
Can you think of a single instance where hype made a game better?
A good example for me of that is when I tried to play The Last of Us the first time. I never actually finished it. Because people hyped it up so much, I started playing it and I was bored. I was just like, this is what I got excited for. This is the game, ladder puzzle simulator. This is a game mechanic that shouldn't have been, that should have been left in the PS2 era, but I digress.
I mean, we've actually had a lot of sort of cases of that recently. I mean, like Kingdom Hearts 3, for example. That had like, God, it was over a decade, wasn't it? It feels like it was over a decade of like building up to that thing.
You could say the same about Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah.
But yeah, like hype never helped anybody. It's never helped the game.
And then you get something like Streets of Rage 4, where it almost came out under the rug, and then it was completely fantastic and a real tour de force, you know.
I've been hearing a lot of people, because they had no preparation for Gears Tactics, say how much they liked Gears Tactics, so they were surprised. They had no expectations there.
I feel that way about Shin Sakai. That was one that totally caught me completely off guard, and it's one of my favorites this year.
Did we cover Gears Tactics actually on the site? I don't know.
I think I can't speak too openly about what's in the pipeline, but I think it might be on the cards in the near future.
Okay.
Speaking of like, in a similar example, I mean, Animal Crossing is sort of very much in that nature, where I think a lot of people weren't expecting it to be as good as it was, and obviously a lot of people have attributed its success to the pandemic going on right now and the quarantine orders. But the game at this point has sold like 13.4 million in its first 6 weeks.
I think the timing for something like Animal Crossing was perfect to come out during this time. People really need a feel-good kind of game during this time, and something that they could really immerse themselves in for a long period of time.
Absolutely.
And with Animal Crossing, you know exactly what you're getting.
I mean, don't get me wrong, we did the review, I gave it a 7, but even so, I've played that every single day. Just little stupid things like, mine a few rocks, talk to Blathers for the umpteenth time,
I mean, there's a lot of satisfaction in getting exactly what you're expecting. You know, there is a good quality to that.
Brandon, your thoughts?
Well, we were talking about like hype killing games and stuff. With Animal Crossing, one thing I noticed, just reading on Twitter, people talking about it, is that a lot of the people that bought this game, it's their first Animal Crossing, so they're not coming in with the expectations of the older parts of the series. So what Fingal was saying about the timing being good, I think that got a lot of newer people into it.
I certainly agree with that. I mean, the only thing I've seen people complaining about is the lack of a frog-shaped chair.
Frog-shaped chair.
Yeah, like
Yeah, they got a patch and froggy chair. We're gonna riot.
which blows my mind. I'm sort of here, I'm screaming at Tom Nook saying, "Yo, let me build slopes at a 45-degree angle," and people are more worried about the chair.
I miss the retro games that you could play. In the first Animal Crossing, I remember you could get an NES and you could actually play entire NES ROMs on it.
Ah, damn, dude.
Remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
That'd be so good. I mean, I've just like got an arcade machine sitting in my house, and all you do is when you press the A button in front of it, it makes a retro noise, and that's it. Which is nice, but.
Well, I mean, the thing is now that Nintendo sells a lot of that stuff on their shop, or they want to sell that stuff on their shop. So.
Yeah, I think the internet certainly changed the nature of things like that. I mean, the other day I've just learned that. I mean, I've got all my garden set up just how I wanted it, and I just discovered there's a whole breeding mechanic with flowers, and it's just so biblically weird.
The flower breeding's been in the game for a couple installments now.
How do you feel about the direction that Last of Us 2 is taking?
Being it's a game series, I have never looked from the outside looking in. You know, it seemed like it was basically something they wanted to make as a film or as a TV series. They couldn't, so they made it a game. But looking at what they're doing now, it looks like they're doubling down on things that will make certain people angry, so that more people talk about it. And they've gone with this ending.
Value.
Yeah. I mean, the ending they've gone for, it's going to make the new Star Wars trilogy look good. That's how bad it is.
I physically cringed when you made that comparison.
It's an apt comparison, you know, overhyped to hell, and then you watch
It's a version that is meant to shock and make you think that it's intelligent. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I agree. It's just painful how accurate that is.
Oh yeah, no,
It's a
really
very
good call.
it's a very cheap, like low-hanging fruit thing that you can do to try and to do to a franchise to gain interest.
Well, you guys know that meme? Haha, I was only pretending to be an idiot.
I don't.
This is a living embodiment. Yeah.
The sad thing is, I don't think people at Disney or Naughty Dog are pretending to be idiots.
But yeah, what else? What other news has happened?
Yeah, in the news this week. Okay, this kind of segues on from what we were talking about, sort of like the mirror side to hype. War of Assured, JRPG that was on Kickstarter. They were going quite well for a while, and then all of a sudden they sort of said, actually, you know what? We're not happy with how this Kickstarter's going. We made some mistakes early on. We're going to cancel the Kickstarter and come back later with a better base. I mean, think about how many developers nowadays say, yes, we fucked up, we're sorry. I mean, that's unheard of.
It makes me wonder that maybe they're in negotiations with a potential publisher to pick it up. And if that doesn't work out, then they'll come back to Kickstarter.
I think they did say something along the lines of that this Kickstarter's success did attract somebody, a partner. They didn't say who, but they did say there were. Yeah, they did say they were going to come back to Kickstarter. So I think it'll be a case of the partner's going to half fund it, or depending how conversation goes, maybe instead of doing a Kickstarter, they will just say, yeah, here's the whole thing. So I mean, who knows?
That could be it. That could be it.
Safe bet.
Well,
It's
developers.
it's nice though to see when developers bail out of something that they realize is not a good product or needs more work, instead of just trying to
Right,
something
more
out
they
there to
can
make
do.
the quick.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that I've been seeing that more often lately. Actually, like you hear about No Man's Sky getting all those updates and kind of coming closer to the game that it was trying to be at the start.
Hey, you know what? It doesn't cost anything to admit.
No, it doesn't. I mean, No Man's Sky's recovery was unheard of. And then you compare that, and then you get something like Fallout 76.
It got worse.
Jeez, you have NPCs looting you, and you can't get your shit back because you can't kill them.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Like
That's
no
embarrassing.
disrespect to anybody who's playing that game still. I don't know why you're playing that game.
God no! I mean,
It's like it's Fallout 76 is like what I call the Skid Row of gaming.
Skid Row's
Or,
at least got
I
an
mean-
end.
You know, it's like a crack den.
So I mean, like maybe if you bought the game on sale and you don't really care what's happening, or I think it went free to play at some point,
I
and you don't really care. I get it.
mostly Fallout, like hardcore Fallout fans. You know, the ones that are really, really invested in the series and love like the atmosphere and the lore of it. You know, that's what I think.
I don't know how. I don't know how you can
Most
deal
of them
with.
will admit that it's garbage, but they still just do it because they like Fallout. They just like that universe.
I mean, I liked the first two Fallout games. Fallout 3 was okay, and I really liked New Vegas.
Everyone loves New Vegas.
And I played 4, and I was disgusted, and I said I don't want to play Bethesda's versions of this for a while. I was kind of disappointed in the Outer Worlds too, because I thought it would be more enjoyable than it was.
That's something that interests me. I like the premise of it. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm very curious.
My problem with it is, you know how you could shoot your way through most of Fallout New Vegas?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, in this game, if you have decent enough gun skills, there's no reason to try any of the other options around thing.
Okay, poor balancing.
Yeah, so like the options of trying to be the stealthy or diplomatic person who has to go through all these other skill checks, they don't actually like save you a fight that you can't pull yourself out of.
Oh.
You know, like in Fallout 1, where there was the point where you could try to talk your way through the super mutants because you can't really beat them unless maybe like you save scum, or you come way later in the game. Yeah, there's not sequences like that. There are not sequences that play like that.
So you have to fight.
Well, no, there's options to not fight, but you're never punished for just being a big gun-toting brute who shoots everybody in the head.
Yeah, no consequences.
Yeah.
Okay.
I felt like the difficulty was never hard enough, and the item management was never really there. But I mean, New Vegas had the thing where there was stim packs everywhere, so.
Is there like I remember in New Vegas, there's a whole side to the game where if you make your character really stupid, that completely changes all the dialogue for every character that you talk to. Is there something similar in Outer Worlds?
I've heard that it has some effect. It's not as drastic, but it's there. I didn't play through it enough, honestly, to really try different character builds.
All right.
The craziest example of something like that, are either of you or any of you guys familiar with Vampire the Masquerade?
Not me.
Yes.
I played the first one.
Right, well, in that game you have you can be one of various factions of vampire. one of the vampire factions, I think if I get this name right, is the Malkavians. The things about Malkavians is that they have like psychic powers. They can sort of, manipulate people, make them go crazy. The only downside is that they themselves are insane. So how this is represented in game is that you get a totally different story. Characters will say things which you wouldn't learn until the end of other playthroughs. A news anchor on the TV will talk to you like you're standing in the same room.
It's adorable.
It's insane. Malkavians apparently are great to play as once you've done everything else. Speaking of Vampire the Masquerade, Xbox recently did their big sort of conference thing, sort of showing off what their partners were making recently. It's a big list, which we'll sort of get back to later if we get time.
I've heard a few things, and some things in that list have my interest, but I don't know too much about it. I did not watch the conference. How about you?
I covered it as best while I was watching it. I sort of got everything out as I could, got the trailers up, so on and so forth. But with one of the two of the games that were announced, one was Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, and the other was Scarlet Nexus. The Tales of Vesperia guys. You're a psychic soldier fighting off against mutant aliens. It's all very anime and fun and great. About 24 hours later, they confirmed that Scarlet Nexus was also coming to PS4, PC and PS5, while Bloodlines 2 was coming to PS5. So the question I want to pose to the group today is having an embargo on announcing what platform your game is going to be on anti-consumer, even if the release of that game is going to be months from now.
I feel that the more information people have, the better. So I can't really say it's anti-consumer. They're being told straight up. So.
I don't think it's a huge deal, especially if it's 24 hours away. I don't know if there's. I think another thing that's changed is most people are buying copies digitally now. I won't say most. A lot of people are buying copies digitally now, and needing to get a physical copy and making sure that the store has enough in stock for the first run is not the issue it was, say, 10, 15 years ago.
No, not at all.
I mean, as long as the embargo doesn't pop way later, then I don't think it's a big deal. 24 hours to get the hype train going, have articles, have their voice there for whatever weird backroom deal that the publishers and the Microsoft will have is. We're not really going to do anything about that. That's just
publishers got to make money too.
So.
Full disclaimer, by the way, I'm only suspecting there's an embargo. That's just my thoughts entirely. It could just be the fact that somebody forgot to publish a blog just after the conference happened.
There probably was some sort of exclusivity thing or something with Microsoft. There probably was. You could be right, though. It could have just been something that passed up or something.
They love the fact that they can put in the description of every video the fact that it's optimized for Xbox Series X, and if you buy it on Xbox One, you get it sort of ported about later when it comes out on the X series, So the full conference, if we can do a very brief rundown, apart from the two we already mentioned, we had The Medium, which was sort of a horror, survival-y sort of looking game. Of interest was the fact that one of the game's composers is going to be Akira Yamaoka, who did Silent Hill. Apologies for butchering that name there.
Yamaoka.
Thank you. Just shout out if you want to sort of just talk about any of these as we're going through. Then we had The Ascent, which was pretty much co-op action RPG. Some big mega corporation falls, and then you try and find out what happened to keep the peace.
Is it true that most of the videos that they showed were pre-rendered?
They said they were not. They said that all footage was captured on the Xbox. You know, it was captured all in engine during gameplay, but we have heard that song and dance before from all of the big three.
Yep.
I mean,
Although I would argue that today, with the consoles being basically just high-end PCs, like literally using customized PC parts, it's a lot. How do I put this? It's probably going to be a lot more realistic, and the games themselves can be, have, for optimization purposes, they can be scaled down in terms of texture quality and effects and particles, just to get the thing running, well on next-gen hardware. Because it might run just fine in this specific scenario that they're showing off at E3 or at this event, but 6 months down the road, before launch, they could realize with their game testers that there are major parts of the game where it runs really poorly. So they have to optimize, the way that the game runs in order to get it to run properly throughout the rest of the game.
And there are bound to be gremlins in the console, just not only because it's a brand new console, but because of your natural...
Well, there's also one really cool tech that I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time on, but there's something called variable rate shading, which basically allows to change both the texture and graphics quality, along with the, consoles already have the resolution that's variable, dynamic resolution scaling. They're allowing more games, or they're allowing more engines that support variable rate shading, which is going to allow textures and effects in more complex scenes to be lowered to maintain a certain frame rate, which I think is really cool.
So rather than the frame rate sort of dropping through the floor, the textures temporarily pop out, as it were.
The
use lower rate textures.
Entire sides of
effects aren't as good.
just may not even be rendered at all. Like it's something that I've seen done where like an entire area, like behind the POV, is probably not there.
Yeah,
does that.
Yeah,
NVIDIA does that.
I mean, there's all sorts of tech coming that sounds really interesting. I mean, one of the games coming up through the pipeline, Bright Memory Infinite. I think we played the preview for the that was paid. They talked rather big about the fact that weather effects and things like that can get sucked through wormholes and things like that. So,
wow.
Basically, the way they're describing it is basically no loading times. Everything runs smoother, which then gives them more power to do more crazy things with graphics.
Well, the really cool thing about these new next-gen consoles is they all have NVMe storage, which is going to make loading times kind of, I won't say irrelevant, but make them a non-issue in most games.
I mean, during the PS4, not really conference, but like the conference they did instead of GDC, they were talking about the fact that game design will have to change now because you won't have to build in long corridors or elevators to hide, loading scenes. You can just have a proper streaming level. I mean, that sounds really interesting in my mind.
It's honestly really cool the way that they're doing that. And to give you guys an understanding, current SSDs that you can throw in consoles, the SATA based ones, they get up to about 550 megabytes write per second. Hard drives sit at about 100. NVMe storage sits at between 3500 read up to like 6500 read. I don't know what the new consoles are going to have in them, but it's at least 10 to 20 times, to even 50 times faster than what the current consoles can do and what they're built for.
Damn. Can't wait to play an indie game that uses pixel art on that.
Yeah, I was just
Fingal, you've just cut out there. What are you saying? Fingal? Buddy?
A majority of games do not take advantage of even a fraction of the specs that most people have access to them, because not every console or PC is is built equally.
Mm.
Well, I mean, with stuff like graphic settings, you can have different options for people to use the higher end stuff, but when it comes to storage stuff, there's just a one size fits all, because you can't really rebuild the game in any way to load quicker or slower depending on what kind of drive you have.
Mm.
There's also the matter of just like how the game was built. Like I think of how Okami and that game's frame rate is tied to the to like some other aspect of the game that runs in the background. So you can't ever run faster than 30 FPS without it completely breaking.
Yeah, they kind of stopped doing that in more recent engines because of this. But yeah, older games will always have this issue, and games that have never had proper rebuilds. Bethesda games still have these issues.
Not half. Moving.
It's still kind of funny though how with Resident Evil 2, I don't know if 3 has this too, but the knife attack does way more damage if you're running at 140 frames.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Because apparently it just assumes you're going to be at 60 FPS, so every frame you're attacking someone is something about the damage. So when you're at a higher frame rate.
If you're playing on a base Xbox and you're playing Resident Evil 2, the knife is exceptionally weaker.
That is just insane.
That's kind of shitty.
Zawarudo.
Looking over at the list, I think Dirt 5 would be cool. Mostly because people use that a lot to benchmark, and people really like the Codemasters games for graphics tests. But as a game, I mean, it's kind of mixed.
Control is another one that's a good benchmark.
Brandon.
I may or may not be doing something with Control and graphics cards. Probably by next week.
Okay.
Particles and so much stuff going on, it completely cripples all console variations available now. Everything just buckles in it.
Brandon, is there anything on the list of interest to you that was sort of came out during the Xbox Live conference?
Well, we already touched on the Medium, the horror game.
Mm-hmm.
Something I'm looking for. I heard a lot about Call of the Sea, but I don't know anything about it. But I've heard a lot of people talking.
Short version, it seems like you're sort of a 1930s housewife. Your husband's gone to explore this island in the South Pacific. You're sort of very much against sort of what you do in the area. You sort of chase after him, trying to find out what happened to him. And then surreal things happen. That's literally all we know at this stage.
So what does it look like, a walking simulator or like an adventure game?
Yeah, I'm not compelled by the premise.
I think it's going to be like a Portal sort of thing, puzzle adventure sort of dealy.
Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, I'm pretty into that as long as it's puzzles and not just solely atmospheric and reading clues that you randomly find.
It'll be interesting to see how they do it, whether they do it like that or whether it's a strong female protagonist, whether it's a strong female protagonist.
I heard Scorn's coming back.
Yeah, with probably the strangest launch trailer I've ever seen. People sort of did make me laugh in the comments. Some people were sort of saying, "Why is this ripping off Alien?" And it's like, no, Alien was based off H.R. Geiger.
Yeah. I'm of the belief that too many games look alike these days, and it's important to reinvigorate it with something different and stylish looking once in a while. And Scorn is picking that itch on me.
Damn right. I mean, as much as we talked about graphics a minute ago, at the end of the day, a good art style will always trump good graphics.
Yeah.
The big thing about that is going to be apparently the fact that the maps are non-linear. which I think basically means you'll go through the same door twice and you'll go to different places if you've done different things, and all sort of non-Euclidean geometry guff.
Oh, this hurts my brain. Oh, this hurts my brain.
Do you know what the funny part is? When H.P. Lovecraft used the word non-Euclidean, in science, non-Euclidean means on a sphere, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because the planet Earth is a sphere, all geometry is non-Euclidean.
Non-Euclidean.
But apparently, he didn't have a very good school life. He just couldn't take to really anything. So it's sort of interesting the fact he just used, you have things.
It sounds smart.
Yeah. You describe infrared light. It's a light you can't see. H.P. Lovecraft later writes about this light in the colours. What's it called again? Colours unseen, or colours of light, or something like that, where it's like an alien force that is a shade of colour which cannot be described. Or the fact you have
can be described as you had to have been there.
Yeah, kind of. It's cosmic horror in a nutshell.
So you mean he kind of did the thing that TV writers do when they say, "I'm hacking the GUI. We're in the main. Let's check the email."
Basically,
that was like the 18th century version of that.
one of his horror stories he covered. A guy goes to his apartment, sort of, doesn't like his neighbours or anything particularly, bumps into a doctor. Goes to the doctor's apartment and then finds out that he's got like a new aircon unit in there. Really, really cold in the apartment. Fair enough. During a heat wave, the apartment breaks down. Doctor has a complete piss fit, sort of says, get as much ice as you can, yada, yada, yada. And then it turns out basically that the apartment was kept ice cold to keep him alive. Probably because H.P. Lovecraft Probably because H.P. Lovecraft didn't understand how air conditioning worked. Not just medical science, air conditioning. I wrote a while back, wrote an article about when there was like a tabletop game that was doing Lovecraft, and they sort of made a big deal about saying, we're not going to be racist, yada yada yada. And sort of looking into his life, you just sort of you understand why he was strange.
He didn't have a good education. He had a very limited worldview. He was a product of its time.
Beyond, not even just of his time. I mean, like.
No, he had some very severe, what we would classify now as mental disabilities or mental illnesses.
Antisocial.
Absolutely sort of crazy. Roughly segueing onto that.
Nice.
Hear me out.
Were there any rare games shown at the Microsoft thingy?
Oh, which one was that?
Anything from Rare?
I don't think so. Do you know the other thing that was rare was the gameplay in the Assassin's Creed Valhalla gameplay trailer? Da-da!
Another one of those?
Yeah, I mean, if anything was pre-rendered, that was.
I'm looking forward to it because it's going to use their new engine that they debuted with. It's probably going to use the same engine that they debuted with Ghost Recon Breakpoint. And it's probably going to support Vulkan. The performance on that should be way better. And the weird Assassin's Creed bugs that's kind of plagued the series for a while might finally be fixed.
Here's hoping.
I don't know if I really. I don't know if I agree with the tone that they're trying to set, where the Vikings were good people and they cared about women and children or something.
Oops. Didn't they try this shit with Spartans? I don't know. I'm out of the loop.
Yeah, I don't know. I still like the games. I don't know.
All cultures have had, families, no matter what they've done. But I mean, actually, before the quarantine went down, I went to the Jorvik Centre in York, which sort of talks about Vikings and things like that. And actually, it's really interesting to sort of read about. Like, the fact was that there's records of British people sort of hating the fact that the Vikings groomed every day and bathed once a week,
Yeah.
because their women then lusted after Viking men.
Yes. Yes.
Or the fact that the ones, particularly around York, what they would do is, like Mjolnir's hammer, the Mjolnir hammer, sort of Thor's hammer, is like the religious symbol.
Mm-hmm.
When dealing with fellow Vikings, they'd keep it as normal. They'd sort of say, "Oh, cheers, Tar, thanks a lot." Then when a Christian comes along, they'd sort of twist it upside down, pretend it was a Christian cross, to then do business with them.
It's kind of funny too, because I've read about the Norman invaders, the ones that eventually somewhat became the leaders there. Like they took over a lot of the aristocracy, and a similar thing happened where, because they were well groomed and typically blonde and blue-eyed and large, the women would lust after them too. So it's kind of funny.
It is crazy. It is crazy.
Speaking of lust, though, what do you guys think about Cyberpunk with those giant?
All I can say is thank goodness they're making a game that can represent me. Thank God. I mean, I wouldn't know what I could do if I couldn't play a game where I couldn't have a character accurately represent myself.
In more ways than one, because you can change your combinations of genitals as well.
Nice.
Can I
honestly, the body mod stuff freaks me out way more. Like the weird, like, no face throat thing. It's a bunch of wires. That kind of stuff freaks me out.
Can I control, like, the position of my genitalia? Like, what if I want my dong on my shoulder?
Nice.
Who knows?
I'd be way more comfortable with that, honestly, than the, when someone opens their mouth or they have a hole in their armpit, it's just a bunch of circuitry.
Well, it's actually quite ironic where you've got people that where gamers are growing up, we're dealing with all these progressive political themes, and yet the second we do anything about gamers, there's any game that sort of touches on sex, it's like evil.
Well, to be fair, first off, they're a lot of those people are the atheist version of the angry Christian moms from the 60s or from the 80s. But I mean, to give them credit, most gamers are probably just going to have giant genitals and place them wherever. So, we're not really going to handle it maturely. Let's be honest.
Some people are going to probably take the opportunity to sort of get the biggest gun they can, and role players having a micro penis. Who knows?
Hashtag average shrimp gang.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on shoulder-mounted tactical dong.
Speaking of things that are wildly offensive, recently...
I love you guys, sorry.
Think about the applications if it's on your shoulder,
Well, you wouldn't have anybody...
I'd rather at the end, as like a, like a pair of brass knuckles,
And you know how, like, the Predator has that side-mounted cannon on his shoulder? Like, but it's like a penis? Think about it.
Oh, no.
It changed American football.
Look at points.
Oh, God.
You wanted to take us somewhere else.
I want to go anywhere but here. We have a beautiful new. We have a wonderful new guest, and you're talking about shoulder dicks.
This is what the people want. This is what they asked for.
This is what they're paying
for. To be fair, I've looked in our Discord. I know what they like.
So to take things a bit more seriously at the minute, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, they've sort of they've recently released an article in which they are claiming that Steam are harbouring extremists, you know, sort of, and trying to groom people into sort of becoming neo-Nazis and things like that.
I'll say. Have you ever heard of the PC master race?
It's so bad because Reddit became so progressive now that people yell when you say that, and they have to explain that it's about gaming. It's so bad.
This is sort of the crux of what you sort of touched on there is the fact what people were sort of saying, where they had doubt whether the ADL were accurately portraying what they were concerned about. I mean, obviously, in the article, what they focused on was obviously quite terrible, and you know, but then you also look at the website where they've said things that are hate symbols, and they've got Pepe up there, which was only deemed
Adorable.
a hate, which was only deemed a hate.
I'm gonna give my own personal take because I am a dirty, filthy PC gamer. Most of the people who they probably found as doing that were angry teenagers who put pictures of Hitler up because they think it's hilarious.
They think
trolling.
it's hilarious because people react to it. That's
Yes.
why.
Exactly,
Yes,
outright
and because
outright
people
trolling.
go, what do you mean?
Or they're just role playing. No one. I mean, a lot of people do that. Just like to pretend because it's funny because they like to get a reaction. I do that.
A friend of mine would regularly just play Counter-Strike just to troll people. And he would just say, like, anti-white stuff to white people to make them feel bad. He'd just say that shit, just for no reason, because it would work. You have to understand, well, I think they do understand, they just don't care and they need to write about something. They need something to fight against.
It's ammo.
Because organizations like those need something to constantly be funded and need a reason to be funded.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
If they solved the problem tomorrow, they wouldn't need to exist as an organisation.
Well, here's the thing. There are going to be wealthy Jewish people who see this and go, oh my god, this is terrible, right? And they're going to give money to the ADL. Like a lot of activist organizations, I think most of our listeners are familiar with how activist organizations work.
Prey on
They're just
fear.
another group of them. They prey on the fear.
I mean, one of the...
Although, you know, there are some very questionable things. I don't think people are using Steam as a platform to radicalize people.
No,
I think that people are using news networks to radicalize people.
I'm also going to make this point that
Social, like Facebook.
most of the people who get radicalized don't get radicalized because, you know, they read Mein Kampf or something. They get radicalized because...
They got mugged.
Oh.
That's why.
Well, I was going to say because of the kind of stuff that the media puts out every day that makes them uncomfortable. You can only be so progressive before people feel threatened, you know?
There's this old saying that,
If you call everyone a Nazi for, I don't know, drinking milk, for example, people are going to be like,
they're fighting
I
big
don't
milk.
care. They're gonna be like, you mean I'm a racist because I drink milk? Wow, well I guess I'm just a racist now because it's too hard. This is
true,
what happens to a lot of people
It takes the power out of it.
yeah.
because you make it so absurd and you attack such far-flung targets that people like, oh, so I guess
Because it's
the word
Like-
loses its power.
Yeah, like Nazi has no meaning anymore.
Nazi just means some guy who
You don't
I
like.
don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just somebody you don't like. And you're trying to rationalize violence against strangers.
I mean, sort of
the whole
touching on
Steam
how...
thing.
Sorry, go on, Brandon.
Oh, I was just saying the whole Steam thing feels like a red herring. Like you're saying, people are getting radicalized by news sites and stuff. I've never been killed by somebody in a game with a racial slur in their name and thought, wow, I need to reassess my entire interpersonal relationships.
No. No. Xbox Live was really rough when I was a teenager. And I
It was
didn't become
Wild
radicalized or any more racist or less racist or anything. It was just Xbox. People were just screaming racial slurs at you when you killed them.
Again, dumb teenagers, sort of like you were saying earlier.
They're just teenagers, man.
They'll say anything to get under your skin. That's what kids do. It's all about getting under your skin. They'll say anything. anything.
Which
the
is
Chinese
why
can.
giving
It's
words certain words power, like, you know, Nazi or whatever, and making them such taboos. Of course, kids are gonna fucking pull to them. Excuse my language. I'm sorry. But, you
Hey.
know, of course, kids are going to run to those things.
There's this old
the whole
saying.
intent.
There's a saying where it's they say liberal is a conservative who's never been mugged.
Jesus. Oh. That's a bit.
But I mean, you know, moving on from politics, because we could
Yeah.
probably talk about this for way too long.
No, you're quite right. Quite right. So moving on to something that can't be political in any way, shape, or form. Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord. The Chinese. We've already got a list, so you can see where this is going, but the audience can't. The game has moderators for the Chinese for Chinese players. The downside is that their moderators on their forums have been asking players to report those violating Chinese law, including international players.
Once again, China ruins my video. Once again.
I don't know why
Listen,
y'all are
man.
saying.
Listen, man. Final Fantasy 15 was changed radically, allegedly, because they wanted to hit the Chinese market.
Really?
Oh, man, Devin was changed too.
The whole plot of that game
No blood.
was changed.
Mm.
Like the Death God stuff and the stuff with Shiva and the more edgy, like, giant city stuff was taken out of the game, and they redid the story when the director changed, partially because of China.
Mm. I mean, that game had allegedly quite a laboured development. If even half the stories are true, but there are.
Oh, I could go on about that development cycle. I know quite a bit.
But I mean, there are so many games out that so many films that try to appeal to China, and now every cinema is shut.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the future of that's going to be very interesting. When you've got a game with an international server, I mean, briefly bouncing on to another subject briefly, did you hear what happened with Animal Crossing in China?
No.
Totally banned.
Yep. Game got banned after pro-Hong Kong protesters were sort of, using clips from the game to sort of express themselves, so they'd paint the Chinese government officials' faces on the ground and hit them with nets. And things like
That's
that.
adorable. That's so cute.
The next day, or a couple of days after that video happened, Chinese politicians were talking about not just banning the game, but banning Chinese players from interacting with anyone foreign. So I'm basically asking for Chinese-only servers for video games.
That's gonna happen. I'm telling you, that's gonna happen. That's gonna be the future. But you were gonna say something, Brandon, before I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no, don't worry about that. But talking about the Chinese servers, on one hand, I think that's a good thing because we'll have less gold sellers. On the other hand, I just don't like it. It's just, how it affects people's ability to express themselves. I mean, that's obviously a big problem with China as a whole, but in regards to video games, it suddenly becomes a little bit more personal.
Yeah, it's affecting the foundation of a game's development now.
I think Rainbow Six Siege, there was a brief time where they sort of were going to release updates for Asian territories, and I'm saying that with big air quotes, where it was going to remove like assets from the game that looked like they were talking about sex, drugs, rock and roll, and violence and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the neon sign about that.
Yeah, like a sort of nudie girl sort of neon sign got pulled down. Suffice to say, a game based off of Tom Clancy, a guy who fought, who wrote so many books about fighting communists. Suffice to say, the audience kind of rioted, and about 3 weeks after the announcement, they said, "Okay, we're going to roll it back. Please don't get mad with us." Yada yada yada. Sort of touching on what Brandon said earlier. The fact that, touching on what Brandon said a second ago, it's uncomfortable because if Chinese players have their own server, that means you're not going to have your game affected by censorship or things like that. but you're also sweeping the problem under the rug, and you know that they're going to have to endure it.
Yeah.
So
See,
the question comes to asking how much do they themselves care about it?
Mm. Mm.
You know, because I think we in the West have this sort of view that everyone cares about the same things we do.
the freedoms.
Yeah.
I'm sure that it irritates them, but I don't know if it's something that they'd really be willing to
They
look
don't.
at.
They don't. There's quite a bit about the Chinese that I've come to know from somebody who's lived among them for an extended period of time, and a majority of them, they really don't care.
I don't think it's as hardwired into their culture, behavior, and maybe even their blood as hard as it is for the rest of us in the West. Because there's
The way how it was described to me is that they're very drone-like.
Yeah, but I mean,
that they're afraid of thinking for themselves.
which is a horrible way to put it, but then you see their history.
It is, but it's
You see their history
makes
and,
sense.
and what happens to anybody that speaks out.
It rarely happens. It rarely happens. And I mean, I can go on and on about like their culture and how like a lot of the people who are in positions like doctors or lawyers, a lot of them are completely unqualified, and how they'll pay someone to do all the test work for them to get them like the bar, so that they'll have the credentials, but they won't have any of the. They never did any of the work to earn it. They just paid someone to do the work for them, and then there's like this whole sub.
Well, there's also a lot of nepotism. In their
extremely.
culture too, with their businesses and stuff. So.
And then you get stuff like where they've sold masks and medical equipment overseas to help deal with the pandemic, and it's all wankered. None of it works.
Yep.
They sell poisoned dog food. They sell like
Wait, what?
poison baby food. They've sold radioactive
Toothpaste. That was
Nothing. The only thing that we've ever gotten from them that worked was the Wuhan virus.
And even then, people are claiming it, the fatality rate is too low to be a bioweapon.
I'm starting to agree with that statement. The more and more I look in, the more and more I see it here.
But moving on to
that's a whole.
Moving on to sunnier subjects. Who's familiar with Mortal Kombat 11?
They made 11 of them now.
Yeah, and
is that the one where they had the announcement for it last year with the
Game
Savage video?
I was at the
Savage song.
Possibly. I know it came at the Game Awards where they sort of did a fake out where they were going to do like a category, and then they sort of had the scorpion sort of chain smashing through the wall.
Yeah, that was
Yeah. So they're going to release a new expansion coming up soon called Aftermath, May 26th, and that's coming alongside a free update. And they're bringing back friendships, the friendship fatalities.
Nice.
And they're bringing back stage fatalities from 10, I want to say. But the DLC itself, among the characters, they've been pretty open with what the DLC characters have been, and they're going to bring back for this one. They're going to bring Robocop into it.
What's Robocop? I mean, I love Robocop, but no, it's just weird to me to picture him fighting because he's really slow and he uses a gun.
I don't care. It's Robocop. I don't care.
The original actor's reprising his role for it, by the way.
Peter Weller.
Yeah.
So cool.
I think you sort of said he was out of place, but I mean, he's quite in place among the other characters in the roster. I mean, you've got the Terminator, you've got the Joker, you've got who else is in that? Who's in 11?
The people who are out of place are the Mortal Kombat characters. Jesus.
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's absolutely crazy who's actually in the game. Let me just quickly wiki it and just find out who's actually in the game.
In fact, only the Mortal Kombat characters are out of place.
I didn't play 11, but I feel like I'm happy that they still make those games, because every once in a while I can pull it, grab the game and feel like I'm way too young to be playing Mortal Kombat, like when I was 7. Bring me back to that point of nostalgia. The gameplay is still there.
Where you felt like you were too young to play it.
What's that?
Did you ever feel like you were too young to be playing the game because of the content?
Oh yeah, but I care.
I
I
felt like I
care.
was too young to play Kingdom Hearts 3 when I played it. I have no idea what that game is about. I've never played like a game with Donald and Goofy in it that was so confusing.
Here's a funny story about younger me. I went and I was probably even younger than that. I think it was like Mortal Kombat 2 on the Genesis. I played it at my cousin's house, and after I played it for like half an hour, I just got around the house and ran in a circle, screaming. And my dad, for some reason, thought that the game inspired me to do this, and maybe he was right. I don't know, but I was also 5.
Oh, you're 5. Oh, give me a break. I mean, like... Very yeah, I mean, that game sort of just melts your brain when you try to understand the plot. It's just nod with the anime bullshit and enjoy the combat. That's the best thing you can do with those games. But if you do enjoy the story, you get more out of it.
I couldn't complete it. It's one of the rare moments where a story was just completely put me off from the experience because I couldn't care about the action in the game. You really need a simple premise to keep me hooked for an action game. Just something that I can understand, you know?
It started simple.
It doesn't have to be complicated.
So, I saw on the website earlier this week, the Billy Mitchell thing.
Yes.
It's kind of hilarious.
Does he have a case?
he thinks he does. So for those listening who are unfamiliar, Billy Mitchell, famous for trying to break records for arcade games and frequently getting called to be a cheater. He's suing Twin Galaxies, who are like a website or an organisation that specialise in hosting the scores. And he's claiming because they dismissed his high score because they felt it was using emulation or it was using a cheating device of some sort, he states it was defamation.
He's a hot sauce salesman.
A what salesman?
Hot sauce. I'm serious. That's what he does. He has a hot sauce brand, and that's what he does.
So you weren't using like a turn of phrase like snake oil salesman. You mean he is literally a man who is selling a
sells hot sauce. That's what he does.
Wait. I can buy Billy Mitchell hot sauce?
Yes, you can.
I don't own this already?
Yeah, this is a real thing.
Is it good hot sauce?
It's probably all right.
I like hot sauce.
Been doing this for a long time.
Guys, just so everybody in the chat can get mad at me, I am a Frank's Red Hots guy. Frank's Red Hot has not paid me anything. Although if they would, I'd be very happy to show the hot sauce. Just saying.
I'm a McClenny's kind of guy myself.
I've never tried that.
It's quite good. It's light.
I don't know how we got from hot sauce to Billy Mitchell, but I mean...
Place your bets on who's going to be sponsoring us next week, ladies and gentlemen.
Please, guys. Please. Hot sauce companies. Give us your money.
We can do a hot sauce challenge.
Oh, God, no. I'm remembering too many YouTube videos and they're all painful. Yeah. So yeah, the...
Hey, all of us, we could all do a hot sauce challenge. We all compete.
And see who gets the highest score in Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
This.
So, Billy Mitchell tried to be the first person to score 1 million points in Donkey Kong. The footage he sent in, because that's how it was done back in the day, he sort of recorded it on a VHS, sent the footage in, basically sort of said it was great. I think the issue was the fact with the points he was getting or the artifacting on the screen. There was something about the video. People were saying, hey, this doesn't look like normal footage. After an investigation, Twin Galaxies basically sort of rejected it. They said, okay, there's too much doubt over this. Even though we can't definitively prove this, we are going to remove his high score. This other guy's now got the record, and Billy Mitchell will not be allowed to submit it ever again. Wasn't until after Twin Galaxies sort of rejected the score that he then sort of started this lawsuit against them. and he sort of said, "Here's affidavits from people that say what I did was legitimate." One of them actually the founder of Twin Galaxies, oddly enough.
It seems like he does have a case. Then I mean,
yeah. It sort of balances on the video, which ironically you can see in the documentary about him, King of Kongs or something like that.
Yeah, King of Kong. I've seen it.
So it'd be a case of, well, there's this strange video, but you've got an affidavit of, like, he claims dozens of, like a dozen people sort of saying, sworn affidavits sort of saying that there's like 25 eyewitnesses, that there it is. But in turn, Twin Galaxies is trying to do an anti-slap motion, which is what you basically do to sort of try and stop a slander lawsuit if you believe it's false.
Yeah, I don't know. This is probably above my pay grade. Especially if the website is above my pay grade.
I'm just surprised that people still give a fuck about Donkey Kong.
I'm just surprised that Billy Mitchell has a hot sauce brand that may or may not rip and tear my insides. Speaking of rip and tear,
hey, you're doing well. You know how to do segues. You're doing well. You're doing well. Would you like to take it?
No, I think since you're the guy who covered it, I think you could probably explain it a little bit better.
Okay, so the Cliff Notes version, and I do mean Cliff Notes version. Mick Gordon guided the soundtrack for Doom. Later on, was involved with the soundtrack for Doom Eternal. People sort of shared this screen cap of an alleged DM from him and somebody else, and he sort of said, "Well, I doubt I'm going to work with id Software anymore." Later on, he also sort of said on Twitter far more publicly, he sort of said, "Well, I don't like how they mixed the tracks I submitted to the game." Now, the thing about now, we've actually had the executive producer actually come forward and address it. Short version, Gordon was always asked to do 12 tracks. Gordon himself allegedly then sort of said he'll actually do 30, and actually mix it together for a full-blown soundtrack as well. And then id Software agreed to this, even though it meant it would delay the soundtrack for the collector's edition. Gordon didn't produce anything. The lead audio designer then started making their own tracks as a backup. Later on, Gordon allegedly agreed to send what he had made to the lead audio designer to mix. Apparently, it wasn't very good. He then delivered 9 tracks, which, according to the executive, he claims they didn't meet their standards, their expectations. Only one track had the heavy combat music he expected. All the others were quite ambient in nature. Gordon allegedly then claimed it was he had issues throughout trying to make these tracks. And it's basically, he's just sort of, despite the fact that the executive sort of said very nicely, and he sort of said, if he wants to produce more music, we're more than happy to sort of discuss that further. But he basically just thrown Gordon under the bus by the sounds of it.
I'm a little lost here. What's Gordon's beef again?
Gordon didn't really have a beef. He was just sort of saying, I'm probably not going to work with id Software again. And the executives sort of turned around and sort of saying he didn't do what he was asked to do.
I mean, so he did a great job mixing the first soundtrack, and the second soundtrack, like it wasn't as good, but it was fine. I definitely don't think it was worth holding the game off any longer for. I feel like the Doom 2016 soundtrack was probably one of the better gaming soundtracks I've heard.
I agree.
It's really gonna suck that he's not going to be involved in future ones. But if it's true that he did not deliver, which apparently he's admitted to not.
We haven't heard
delivering.
We haven't heard anything from Gordon since the statement from the executive, so we can't confirm that either way. We can only go with what the executive's saying right now.
I'll also say that generally there's issues with really creative people in delivering stuff on time, usually it's not the company's fault. It's the artist's own lack of inspiration or drive for whatever reason.
Wow. He's been so consistent with his quality too.
Mm.
And I'm just sort of giving my own take on this. Honestly, id Software could just be really throwing this guy under the bus and he didn't do anything wrong. But I would guess that there is a combination of both of them, and the fact that this game does have to be released at some point. And at some point, when you're working in the office with the rest of the team, you can't tell them we need to wait for Mick to finish off his version of his masterpiece. It's a little unfair for everybody else there to be told, yeah, your product's just going to sit while we wait for this guy. So the guy who's the main audio mixer just has to do it.
Damn.
And kind of make what, you know what I mean? Like, he kind of just has to take what's there and work it and put it together and get the thing.
He's not Mick Gordon. He's not going to make something that'll make Mick Gordon happy.
No, and Mick Gordon is never going to be happy with someone else doing his work.
Is Mick Gordon a prima donna? Are there any reports of him?
Not really. I mean, he was in a band. There's a little bit of that kind of stuff with any artist, because it really is their own personal work and they do pour themselves into it, and they do spend tons of time thinking about things to try to perfect it. And their work is always going to be better than some guy who's just trying to push something up. Just is.
To imitate it, sure.
Like, I'm sure if Mick would have had the time, this soundtrack would have been way better. But again, that kind of work requires drive and passion, and sometimes you just don't have it. And it's really hard to get yourself up and force yourself to be creative. You really can't do it.
The original...
I get burnt out from writing, and writing is not anywhere near as creative as mastering a soundtrack like that.
Yeah, there's different tones. You got to have different themes for different kinds of environments that have to capture a different kind of feel and atmosphere.
Oh, it's a labor of love, and you need to be ready for it.
Probably exhausting.
So, I mean, I'm sure he probably got a little burnt out, and this stuff happens a lot. It's a shame. I really would hope that he works on the next one, because I would.
But then again, it opens up the possibility of someone else giving their chance to, like before Mick Gordon, who did we have for Doom soundtrack?
That's fair. He modernized it though in a way that a lot of the other ones. I mean, like he's working with, like he's a really talented guy musically.
He had a good run.
Yeah. Well, at least we'll always have BFG division, guys.
Breach. I think we're sort of coming up to the end of the show. Anybody sort of want to throw in any last minute articles or discussions?
Symphony of the Night's overrated.
Wow. How about you, Brandon?
No, I'm good. Fingal just dropped a bombshell.
Well, I wanted to bring up the fact that AMD launched their new Ryzen 3100 and 3100X parts. These are $100 quad-core hyper-threaded parts. They're basically on par or faster than i7s from a couple years ago for about $100. They're just as fast as the Ryzen 6 cores in gaming. I'm actually working on the review for that for another outlet, but I should have some numbers for you guys after I get the current stuff I'm working on done on these processors. But basically, they're a really good value, and they're about as good as the 6-core parts. Just if you plan on doing other things while gaming, they're probably going to start to hiccup. And that kind of got overshadowed, unfortunately, by the fact that AMD announced that their their B450 boards will not support 4th gen Ryzen processors, along with their 3rd generation boards They're B350 and X370 boards. A lot of people were expecting that they would have processor support through 2020, but apparently it's just they have support for their older motherboards to their old motherboards on the new processors until 2020. These third gen parts though will work on all the previous boards.
So if you buy that graphics card, you're going to have to buy a brand new motherboard on top of that.
If you buy these processors now, you can use the older boards. It's fine. But the fourth gen parts that are coming out later on this year, those will not support the older boards except for the B550 and the X570 boards that are already out and coming out. So some people are feeling like they're getting really hammered because some of them bought the B450 boards even a few months ago, and now they're being told that the parts coming out at the end of this year aren't going to work with them. They're getting a lot of flack. Frankly, I think it's a little overblown because it's unfortunate for the people who have gotten there, but AMD had a big problem with getting motherboard vendors to put out basically the software and the firmware to work with the older boards on the newer processors, and it was a very, very, it's like a shit show. It's the easy way of putting it. Support was all over the place. Some boards worked, some boards didn't. Some processors worked with some boards, some didn't. And it took them like 6 months to get it working. Jesus. And I'm sure the motherboard vendors did not want to continue having all of their software guys working on this way more than they should.
It sort of feels like every time news about graphics cards breaks outside of the more technical side of things, it's always bad news. Was it AMD or was it Nvidia a few years ago that were selling graphics cards that were doing less than advertised?
Well, so to not give you an overly technical answer, they had graphics cards that performed at full speed for 3.5 gigs. But because of the way that the architecture worked, the last 500 megabytes performed at like a quarter speed. But the actual occasions where that would come up would be incredibly rare outside of massively modded Skyrim.
Okay.
So like it's kind of you have to find the problem to see where this actually matters. And a lot of the news that comes out from this stuff, a lot of people sort of take out of context. Now, that being said, if you bought a B450 board for, $100 and you assume that you would get support for 4th gen parts, that really sucks. But to be fair, AMD has had a whole bunch more features and support that the motherboard guys are going to be busy on with current boards, that it's going to be hard for them to make sure to have resources to make sure that these previous older stock are going to be up to spec. I've also heard some people saying that some motherboard vendors may allow previous parts to work if they, spend the time and resources. It's just that AMD isn't trying to push anybody into it. I don't know how true that is. I need to talk to some motherboard people about it.
And especially right now where everything's on lockdown, people aren't getting parts for jack shit right now. I mean, this is the sort of big thing with like the Xbox Series X and the PS5. Both of them are going to have hardware issues. I'm calling it now. There's another thing.
Supply on current gen boards is really hard to get. A lot of stuff is coming out of stock, and the only thing you see is the stuff that Amazon sellers, third-party sellers, are selling for ridiculous numbers, like 3-4 times what retail should be. So I mean,
oof.
I don't know. A part of it is I'm sure a lot of gamers are familiar with the YouTube conjecture artists that kind of chase every beat that they can to create stories out of nothing. There are people like that on the PC hardware side, and they're really pushing us. Now again, it really sucks if you bought a board recently and you're in that position. And AMD definitely did steer people to do that. I wouldn't say they steered them, but they kind of didn't give them an option, a good budget option for a while for them to do this. Because they didn't really release a budget section of processors. Basically, motherboards. Their motherboards were like 130 for the new 570 boards. So people who were trying to save money bought the B450 boards, which won't have support for future processors. That being said, though, the reason why I'm not too bothered by it is there are currently 16-core processors that AMD has. So if you want to upgrade on your current platform, you can go buy a 16-core processor. And, I mean, I don't know what more you'd want.
So the way you're describing it...
If you want to upgrade on the older boards, you can upgrade up to a 16-core part. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying.
So this wasn't something AMD could have warned people about. They couldn't have said, hey, we're halfway through developing this. Looks like the B is not going to support the B450. Just a heads up.
I mean, they probably could have earlier. The fact that they tried to bundle this with the news of B550, probably troubling. There's probably some kind of PR reason. It's troubling that they didn't announce this earlier, because they should have. But usually news like this doesn't come out. It comes out the news doesn't get trickled out. It gets sort of released all at once, which is unfortunate. They should have done that, though, honestly. This might have been working with motherboard manufacturers on the new board. They heard how much they didn't want to be forced to do this again, so they kind of retroactively said this won't get any more support. I mean, again, though, it might just me being a contrarian, because a lot of people are very, very angry about this to a level that I don't think is deserving, I guess.
Okay, that makes sense.
Especially when you have stuff that... So, technically, they could support all the older stuff. This is a really complex issue. I'm sorry I'm taking so much of...
It's okay.
It's so when you're talking about these new motherboard platforms and the different features they have, it becomes more difficult as sort of like a time sink to make sure that these new processors also work on products that they released 3 years ago. That, they want to sell a new motherboard to you. Motherboard manufacturers want to sell a new motherboard that you buy with your new processor. Although the bad thing about this for AMD is that if you're buying a new motherboard for your processor, for your new processor, you can also buy an Intel motherboard for an Intel processor.
Right.
Because, the extra $100 you're spending, if you're not spending it and you're using your old board, you can spend that money on the new processor, the new CPU. So it's not good for them, but I feel like they didn't want to have as many issues as they did before.
So a sensible decision then.
But yeah, that pretty much covers it for me.
Okay. I think that's all the time we have got. We've been going for about just under an hour and a half. Any final thoughts from the guys?
I think I made my piece.
Yes. And in case you couldn't tell, we will be doing a retro review of that coming soon. Please don't be angry. Please.
You're going to get so many angry people. I mean,
I'm very fair. You'll see.
The way
I like that game a lot, and I like games like that a lot, but I can understand people taking some issues with it.
Look, remember what I said about hype, and you know what? I still have my original copy from 98 or 97, and when something's fucked up, it's fucked up.
Oh yeah, you showed that to us in the Slack. You're a real gamer, Fingal.
Anyway, you'll see what I'm talking about when the review goes up.
And I think that caps it off nicely. So I think we've covered some highs and lows of the week, and no doubt next week will be even more unpredictable. I mean, we've talked about everything from desecrating sacred cows to shoulder cocks to China. You will not get this on any other podcast. So, I have been Ryan, and you have been listening to the Niche Gamer podcast, and you've been listening to Fingal Belmont.
See you next time.
Alan Watts.
Let's go.
Brandon Little.
It's been fun.
And you guys have all been listening to me. Catch you all next time. Bye-bye.
Do I sound like Ben Shapiro, yes or no?